Welcome in, boys and girls. This is my 2025 archery setup, and these are the arrows that we will build in today's video. It took me a while to land on this decision, and I wanted to bring all of you along throughout the process. When it comes down to it, this Black Mamba Pro actually requires more effort than a lot of other bows that I've had in the past, as well as does the arrow required for it. The arrow that we are building for our 2025 deer season is the Warhead Arrow Tomahawk in 300 spine. We'll get into the wraps and the vein choice and all that, but throughout this video, I wanted to offer a discount code right off the bat. Without further ado, I would like to announce that I am currently working with VPA broadheads. If you've never seen the Indiana-based company VPA, Vantage Point Archery, I am very proud to have been shooting them for the last 4 or 5 years. This particular broadhead, the 1 1/4 3-blade vented, one-piece steel broadhead, is my initial arrow choice for the season, although I have been running VPA broadheads for the last 4 or 5 years, and I have multiple profiles. In the future, we'll get into more options from VPA, but I just wanted to offer everyone out there, Rambo 10 is the discount code, and it is site-wide. It will be down in the description, just in case you forget. So without further ado, let's jump in to this complete arrow build from scratch. Now, obviously you can see the line down here, right? This is a long video. It's going to take a little bit of investment on your part. That being said, I don't follow the complete norm that everyone follows when it comes to building arrows. I skip some steps, and I will explain to you why I feel like not all the steps are important. When it comes down to it, finding the proper spine and then micro-tuning to find the proper dynamic spine within that gap is very important. I'm going to show you how to do that. Once we get there, the rest of this arrow build becomes relatively simple. The difference between buying off the shelf and building arrows from the ground up is like going and buying a custom rifle, spending double the money that you spend on the rifle on glass, then turning around and buying factory-made ammo off the shelf. It's like putting 89 octane in a Ferrari. It's not going to get the performance that you paid for. Only taking the time to make hand loads and finding out what loads work best for you through that rifle is going to lead you to the best possible result, the smallest MOAs, and the best round performance when it comes to taking game. Think about it. In the words of Bruce Ritter Clark, the former owner of Ethics Archery, every animal that you've ever killed wasn't killed with a bow. It was killed with an arrow. So the performance of the arrow becomes very important once you realize this. Now, have you ever bought a group of arrows, dozen arrows, what have you, and 2 or 3 of them perform pretty well? The rest of them are just kind of all over the place. That's what this video is about. Once we get done with building a dozen arrows like these right here, they're not only going to look badass, they're going to fly phenomenally. And once we start screwing broadheads into them, that's when they're really going to shine. To begin with, I put my arrow in my wrist and I drew it back, okay? And if you don't have somebody, put a piece of tape on there. It's safe, it's not going to hurt anything, and you can adjust, right? So I put my tape on there and I got it right to the point where it just does touch my top bar. This is a minimum requirement, right? You can see this arrow actually sticks out an inch past what it has to. And another thing I want to point out is this is also an outsert. So something that you have to take into consideration. The arrows that we are building today also have an outsert. So the post goes into the shaft. This part is the threaded portion, and then the collar actually rides about right there. So we will be giving up, well, I had my finger right about the right spot, didn't I? We'll be giving up this much carbon, and in no way, shape, or form should you ever have your rest come all the way up to the collar. So make sure that you have a little bit of leeway. Now, you can measure carbon to carbon. You can measure whatever you want to. I'm not worried about the 1/8 inch difference in Nock length versus this manufacturer versus the other. But to the front of my tape, 27 inches right there to the front of my tape. That gives me a 1/2 inch window to be able to, use my outsert. That's minimum, right? So I like to use the Serious Archery calculator. And I'll just kind of back up here. Let's throw it up right here. Serious Archery, and there will be a link in the description. Here's what you need to know. You're going to start all the way over here, and you're going to find your total front point weight, right? This is a 55 grain insert system, and I've said before that I try to stay in the normal side of things, right? 100, 125, 150 grain front point of broadhead, right? Along with my insert. By keeping in those three, I can only have a handful of different broadheads in those weights and then kind of pick which one works. So my total front point weight for this on a max is going to be 200 grains. So I'm going to start over here at 200 grains. I will come down to 71.5 pounds, and then I'm going to come across over here to my arrow length. Now, let me highlight this one more time. Let's just go off of this arrow build. Your rest does not need to be right here. I highly recommend that it is here. Okay? This does a couple things. One, if you mess up just a little bit, you've got a little bit of gap. Two, if I cut arrows this long and I decide that they are just a little bit weak, I can come right back here and cut off a 1/4 inch, and all of a sudden they might not be weak. It will save an arrow build. And this doesn't matter a whole lot. So 27 inches is my minimum requirement. Now, I'm going to go back into my Serious Archery calculator, and I'm going to say that I want to hit this on the high side, right? 200 grains is my max. I want to put my max into the chart. At 200 grains, 71 pounds, come on over. 27 inches is my minimum requirement, and it says that that is the last choice for 300 spine. If you look, 25, 26, and 27 is 300 spine, but 28, it says I need to go up to a 250 spine, okay? Now, go back into the chart again. This time, use 175 grains. We'll just bounce over one, come down to the poundage, come across. Now it says 25, or I'm sorry, it says 26, 27, and 28 are a 300 spine shaft. That's where I want to be right there, okay? So on the middle of my front point weight selection and the arrow length that I'm getting ready to build, it spits out and says that is the A choice for that spine shaft, because I can go a little lighter, I can go a little heavier, and that spine choice will work. This is what I'm looking for, okay? Now, it may be that I am able to drop down to that 100 grain point weight. It's going to be a little bit of personal preference there, okay? I like a little bit stiffer shaft, but a stiffer shaft is harder to get to tune, right? And even once I go down to broadheads, sometimes if I go too stiff, it's less forgiving, and my broadhead groups will get a little wider. It's not the broadhead's fault. It's not the arrow build's fault. It's my fault for building it a little too stiff. Now, I have that bow maxed out. I don't leave 2 pounds at the top of the bow to be able to add to it if I want to weaken it up a little bit. Although you could do that, okay? Basically, if you're a little stiff, you can add 25 grains. If you are a little weak, you want a little bit of shaft out here to be able to cut off, right? Because if I build this out and I've got my minimum insert weight and my minimum front point weight, and then I build this and it turns out that it just won't group. Even with field points, my 20-yard group's this big, right? And if that's the case, I'm too stiff. Somehow I have to weaken it up a little bit. So I'm going to put a little bit more front point weight on the front, right? Or just the opposite. It won't paper tune, and every tear is different, and every time I knock tune, it's just floppy and all over the place. And I go back into the chart and I look and I think, man, I was kind of borderline on weakness, right? What can you do then? Well, if you can't drop front point weight, the only thing left to do is start cutting a 1/4 inch off the back of your arrow until you get to that safety line, right? Got to keep it safe. So that's my thought process in this. This is where we're going. I realize it's a long, drawn-out discussion to get there, but I wanted to break every aspect of it down. That way you understand what's happening before it happens. Before we cut our shafts, I want to make sure that I don't have any crazy wobbles, right? I want to start on this side of center, and then I want to go this side of center, and I want to look at both ends, right? Both these ends look really good on this arrow. Not everyone gets to do this. short draw guys, you get to cut off a lot. I don't know what these arrows are, 32 inches, okay, and I'm going to come down to 27. So I'm going to cut 5+ inches off an end, but I get to determine which end that is. So make sure that you're rolling your shafts and looking at your run out. If you got a little bit run out, now this end down here does have some run out. Let's roll it around here and put it up against the pop can so maybe you can actually see it. You see that? You should be able to see that. That is a couple thou right there for sure. But it is on the end of the shaft too. So if I'm going to come back here, it's probably about a half a thou there. So this, I definitely want to cut off that end of that shaft. So I'm not changing anything. I'm not pulling the Nock out. This is the process that you go through. You want to make sure that you get as straight of selection as possible. And obviously we'll number our shafts once we get done. All right, so now we got our shafts cut, and I actually cut 27.5 inches carbon to carbon, okay? I'm actually pushing more towards that 100 grain front point weight, okay? Now, this is a squaring tool, okay? It's just somebody on eBay makes them, okay? I'm not gonna tag them because I don't know who the hell they are. But all it is a reference point, and then you take and put sandpaper down in here, and it's just to ensure that you have a properly square arrow. We'll just rub this back and forth. Now you can take a marker and put around there to make sure that you're, getting proper contact all the way around there, but it's pretty easy to tell. But I'm going to take my sandpaper here and I'm just going to cup it around the last 1/4 inch of shaft, and I'm just going to give it a couple little twists. Okay, what that's going to do is put a little bit of an etch around there, and then that way when I put my outsert on, that gives that glue something to hold to a little bit more. So the next thing that's important is shaft prep, and I'm just going to take a few Q-tips here and douse them in alcohol, and just kind of let them sit here for a second. And then these are a 166. I probably have to pull half of the damn Q-tip off of here, but nah, I got it in there okay. Basically, I want to remove that carbon from the cutting process. Okay, so just by rubbing it in there and pulling it out, I'm getting a lot of that carbon off of there. And then I can also make sure that my outside, just clean it up a little bit. Okay, I'll make sure I do them all. 2-part epoxy, 4 to 6 hour is what I like to use. Obviously, I have my spin tester here ready to go. You can use this in a 5-minute epoxy if you want to. Not something I've ever done. I always take my time, make sure that I can move some stuff around if I need to. The beauty of 4 to 6 hour epoxy versus using a super glue style, okay, is the ability to tune as you go. It's going to take and dip about a 1/4 inch of the stud down in the epoxy and get a pretty good ball on the end of it. And then sticking it in here, I'm just going to kind of roll it and work it back and forth and let it work up and down the shaft. Make sure that it's pressed up against the carbon firmly and clean it off. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and put a collar on, and it should slip all the way down. Then I'm going to take a extra long field point. You can use a broadhead if you want to. And making sure that my threads go all the way down, making sure that the point does bottom out against the collar, okay? Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it right down onto my spin tester and make sure that my point is facing the way that I want it to. Now, if it comes to a high point, like right there's a high point a little bit, I'll push down on it just slightly, and that's enough to center that, okay? So now that I have it centered, that's where I want to leave it. I want to go ahead and just stand it up right here on an end as vertical as possible, and I'm going to leave that sit and let that dry. One step that we did not take, I didn't weigh my components, I didn't weigh my shafts, I cut them and I built them, and to me, it's not that important. I'm a Midwestern guy, okay? My farthest shot over 33 years of hunting whitetails was 40 yards last year, okay? And the number of shots I've taken over 30, I can count on one hand. I'm not worried about the tiny standard deviation across a dozen arrows, right? These 6 arrows, catch one more gear, bud. I know you got one. There it is. So the deviation on these 6 arrows ended up being 4.5 grains without measuring anything, okay? I was 507.7 on the light end and what, 510.8 on the high end. So I ain't worried about that. 5 grains don't matter, bro. Now, if you're constantly yeeting arrows out at 80, you might pay attention to 5 grains. Not me. I ain't doing that shit. Spin tester, spin tester, spin tester. Okay, that is probably one of the best investments you can make as a new archer. Buy tools, buy good tools, and they will last a lifetime. This is not a good tool. Okay, this is like an Apple Archery something or other from 25 years ago. It's not the smoothest thing in the world, but it still works. It's still good. Now, during the glue in process, okay, I let my points get to the point where they're almost hard. And then I come back and I spin test them one more time to check. Of the 6 that we're building, 5 look really good. 1 does not. It's not the greatest. I'm not sweating it. I'm not worrying about it. I'm going ahead and building it. Now, we come back after that had hardened and we put our collars on. Same epoxy process. Make sure you do not get epoxy in the threads. It's also a good idea to put a little bit of wax or a little bit of lubrication on your threads of your field points while you're putting them in to prevent that epoxy from sticking to the threads. Big deal. Almost had a near miss, but once again, after letting that sit for 3 to 4 hours on that hardening process, I come and checked, and sure enough, I had one that was just a little too stuck, so we took it out of there, right, and then put a new one in. All the while coming back to my spin tester multiple times throughout the drying process to make sure that those are straight as can be. Now, let me say this, as far as arrow builds go, as far as components go, the fitment of every single component in your shaft, when it comes down to it, it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. While a little bit of forgiveness is good, the tighter tolerances perform better on the build process, right? The tighter the tolerance, the harder it is to get out of alignment, and that is a big, big deal. If you pay attention to what you're building, you can build good stuff. So take your time in the gluing process and be able to come back, whether it's waking up in the middle of the night and testing, okay, and then realigning during the drying process. This is a big, big deal, right? You have to be able to spin test. Now, it's time to go outside. I've got my arrows built, and currently right now I am in the Nock tuning process. After we built our arrows, I then come to the paper tuner one more time, and I got one shaft to make a bullet hole, right? That's all I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the rest of them. I am not Nock tuning through paper at 7 and 10 and 12 feet like a lot of people tell you to do. No, don't do that. Don't worry about that. I'm going to go now into the bare shaft tuning process. I'm not worried about where my arrows are hitting initially, okay? Initially, I want to make sure that my rest is perfect and I'm getting a straight arrow as far as possible, right? Just test one arrow, and as long as it is flying as straight as possible for 15, 20 yards, we can then start the Nock tuning process, okay? Now, during this Nock tuning process, I absolutely am taking one arrow at a time and tuning each one individually. Let's go outside and see what that looks like. All right, here's our target. We're shooting this block target, all right? Block infinity. All right, there's crossbow ones, there's not crossbow ones. This one's, the reason I like these is because they have the vertical and horizontal line. Now, I'm not testing distance. I'm not testing exactly my impacts right now, so I'm not worried about a horizontal line. I'm worried about a vertical line. Right now, as you can see, we're working on our left and rights, and I'm actually holding my pin at the bottom of this line. And I can physically watch my arrow impacts walking across. Now, see how this hole right here is shot out a little bit? we've been having multiple arrows land in this spot, but more importantly, it is arrow straightness. Okay, I'm nock tuning, and I've had arrows over here and nock high, rotate them a little bit, and then they come down here and they're almost straight, and rotate them a little bit more, and they end up landing right here. That's kind of what the name of the game is, and that's how we're going to work these last two shafts. Okay, just like this right here, there is a indicator on the side of your nock. You need to be using that. I'm always going to place that indicator facing me off the side of the bow, okay? And that is my rotation indicator. Now, not shot this arrow yet, brand new. I'm gonna go ahead and aim at the bottom of the line, like I said, and then we will diagnose what we need to do. All right, this is very important. I'm shooting 15 yards, and I want to see exactly how my arrow's flying. As you can see, if I get just a little tighter, we have a point right, nock left. All right, this is important. I want to pay attention to this. All right, so all I'm going to do, I'm going to take my nock and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and I'm going to shoot it again. I'm not super happy with that shot. I didn't feel like it was the best, but I absolutely am going to take note. Okay, but I didn't feel like my follow through was exceptional on that. All right, same as before, turn 90 degrees and shoot again. All right, so I pulled that left, for sure, pulled it left. Arrow flight's not bad, but I did pull it left for sure. All right, so obviously this is gonna take some time, right? But you have to be honest with yourself. Whether it's a little bit of thumb pressure, a little bit I punched the trigger, a little bit of your inconsistencies, if you're not honest with yourself at this point, this road is gonna be a lot longer than it should. So I'm not gonna take a detour here. I'm gonna shoot that same arrow again before I make an adjustment. And we're actually right on the mark and a little high. All right. All right, so this time should make the difference, hopefully. I'm gonna go 90 degrees. Now this is our third adjustment, okay? So we went from straight up to 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Now we're at 9 o'clock on our clocking of our nock, all right? And our arrows kind of walked around a little bit. This one, more than likely, is gonna line up with that hole that we've been making with our other 4 arrows thus far. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Here was our last and final shot. Zoom in here, we got a little bit of sunburst. Okay, now let's walk up. I'm gonna try to maintain camera angle all the way through the flight path. Maybe I'm a little high here, but you can see we're eating that hole out, and our arrow flight is consistent with the rest of them. And before we started with this arrow, I told you that we're eating this hole out, right? So where did we start at? We started here, then we went up here, and then we kind of came across, and then I shot 3 shots with this last one, right? One time I was here, next time I was here, and then this last time I'm right here. So a little inconsistencies on my part, but you should be able to start eating a single hole out at 15 yards, and more importantly, line of sight. From where you're shooting, you want that nock entering a foam target straight as possible. So I just wrapped up my 6th arrow, and I turned it a quarter, got really good, and then I turned it an 1/8 because I felt confident about it, and it just went right in there. So sometimes you will have to go all the way around an arrow and then try to come back to where you thought it was good, and then other times it may be good the first shot right out of the box. The whole idea to this is being able to get 6 arrows flying exactly the same and hitting the target directly the same angle. You don't want any arrows at any variations up or down. Now, a few key tips to go along with this. One, obviously your naked eye is only so good, right? Use your phone, okay? Zoom in, don't move, shoot an arrow, grab your phone and zoom in. And it will tell you up or down, left or right, okay? Then walk up there and pull it. Tip number 2, make sure that your impacts are not where you're aiming. I'm shooting a line here, and I'm actually impacting the 2.5, 3 inches higher and slightly off to the right of where I'm aiming. Tip number 3 is be honest with yourself. The more time you spend with each arrow, the better that arrow is going to be, right? Tip number 4, take your time. Know your limitations, know when to walk away. If you're tired after arrow 3, don't think arrow 6 is just going to come easy. Nope, stop. Walk away from it from a couple hours, okay? And then dive back into it. Keep every arrow separate. Make sure you know which ones you're working with and which ones that you've not worked with. And if you find it valuable and you're willing to risk going nuts, once you go through all 6 of them, then shoot them all again. Okay? This time I will, on the last time, maybe aim at that horizontal line and make sure each one is, like you want a line of arrows and all in the same direction, right? Now, you're only shooting 15 yards. Don't shoot at the same vertical line because you will damage arrows if things are going well. Don't want to risk your investment at this point. Okay, so that's 5 good tips to make you better at nock tuning. Now, let's fletch them. Sometimes guys get eat up with, I'm good to 15, but out there at 20-25, I'm getting that little bit of fade. Well, I'm here to tell you, that really doesn't matter in my opinion. What I'm gonna do, I will fletch these shafts, then we will start the broadhead tuning process, okay? And that's going to entail me at 30 yards, shooting a field point, then shooting a broadhead. And if the two don't match, I will move that point towards the direction the broadhead wants to travel. Once I get the 2 of them completely together, I should have one hell of a set of arrows. It's a day later. I still got the same clothes on because, well, we went fishing last night. And, well, obviously getting this video out is more important than my sleep. Up until this point, we have only been tuning our shafts, right? As far as nock tuning, making sure that they are all deflecting the same way every time and reacting the same way off the rest every time, which will make them hit the target the same every time. Now is the point in which we determine where our dynamic spine actually lies. Now, you can go off of charts, you can go off of weights and point weights and arrow shaft spine and everything. That's only a starting point to get you close. So my next step is shooting multiple points. We got the same target. Okay, I got another block target over here, and same deal. This time I'm aiming at dots. Okay, I'm going to shoot 3 shot groups. Okay, I've only got 6 arrows, so we're going to have to do this multiple times. Hopefully, if my body will allow me today and consistently. Okay, I'm only shooting 25 yards. 25 yards bare shaft. That's a long ways, boys. Don't think it ain't. Okay. Something will reveal itself. One of these, more than likely, will just be real forgiving. And there won't be no wobble to it or anything. That those arrows will just go thump, thump, and they will just lay right in there. All right, well, honestly, I can't say that there is a clear winner. Now I'm aiming at the 2 black dots, okay? Here's my 100 grain, these 3, and here's my 125 grain, these 3. I can't really say that there's a clear winner here. Switch these over to 150 grain points, shoot again, and see if we get any better than this 125 grain performance. I don't know what that looked like. That last arrow, let's just walk on up together. That last arrow, I was not really very steady. I felt like I kind of punched the trigger, but whatever. I mean, it's real world stuff here. Okay. Well, you know what? I think that 150 did a little better than I thought it was going to. So here's our 125, and then here's our 150. I think I'm going to shoot the 125 and the 150 again and see if there is any change. You know, a stiffer arrow is going to fly a broadhead pretty good. I think it's just going to come down to personal preference on this one. Obviously, there's a clear winner somewhere, but right now, it's not really showing itself to me. So I really expected to see a clear winter, and I didn't. Now, I'm sure part of it is I'm tired, little inconsistencies, but you know, archery is seldom perfect. So I was just going to accept everything as it comes. I'm fine with that. But there was no clear winner. I can't say that any of the three had perfectly straight shafts either. I think the 125s are probably where I'm going to stay. Just for personal preference. Just to stay in the middle of the road. And that's where I Nock tuned at. So I think that's probably where I'm going to be. Now, one thing that I didn't do in this build and in this process is add weight to the back of my bare shaft. A lot of people will tell you that you should weigh your components that you're getting ready to tune with, fletchings, wraps, everything, and then weigh out that much electrical tape, put on the back of the shaft. This is correct. I don't disagree with that, but Nock tuning's Nock tuning. I'm really not that worried about it, because when I put fletchings on, everything's going to be 5 times better than what they are right now. So ideally, yes, I could put weight on the back of my shaft and then do a rest tune perfectly as much as possible and then go through the Nock tuning process. But enough is enough. Let's go fletch some arrows. Well, kids, here we go. Now, this is arrow number 6 and the worst one of our spin test. The broadhead that we're going to be shooting is a 1.25" VPA vented 125 grain. So, if I can get these to fly with manners, then the other 5 are going to be no problem. This one was the one arrow that didn't spin test real well. So, 20 yards, got my target, got my field point, and we're going to see if we can make this broadhead fly like a field point with a little bit of wrist adjustment. One thing I do love, I did get a set of Apex kind of monkey tails, whatever they are, and 500 grains has quieted this bow down elegantly. I will say that. Let's go look. 20 yards right off the rip. I can live with that. So, point is a little higher than the broadhead. If that continues, I will just drop my rest down just a little bit. There ain't nothing wrong with that, bro. One thing we did not cover is arrow wraps. My friend Michael Stonebreaker of The Boutique. If you've never heard of The Boutique, you probably ought to. Go check out his Instagram. I will tag him in the description below. This is the plain Jane right now. These are actually somewhat reflective, although I can't get it to show on video. I've tried. They do shine a little bit. He's got foil wraps. He's got every piece of artwork that you could ever imagine, every color scheme. He's got colors that match specific colors from, you know, veins, whatever you want. You want the AAE chartreuse knock on green. He's got it. He'll make a wrap specifically for you, and he's got hundreds of wrap options. So check him out, The Boutique. Free bro staff plug right here in the description. Let's shoot again. I don't know if you heard it or not. One thing I do have to do is get some felt on my wrist. That could change a few things, but it's just an elevation adjustment. That's all it is. Okay, looks like we have the same 1.5 inch separation, and this time we're rotated. Broadhead's on top, points on the bottom. But I felt like I kind of pulled the trigger high with the broadhead, so it's time to step back. Like we're good at 20. Now it's time to go out to 40 and see if those 2 points separate. Yeah, it's time for me to do it, to dial it in, get it going. I got 5 days until we go hunt Kentucky with Warhead arrows. My arrow build that you have joined me on this evening is a 300 spine Warhead Arrow Company Tomahawk, which is a 166 diameter shaft. We started with, or ended with, Boutique reflective arrow wraps and a 2-degree left offset DCA Saber. Now the reason I chose the DCA Saber is because of the precision archery collaboration with Easton and that write-up. I found that very interesting. I had never tried DCA Sabers until now, and they were spoken so highly of. I thought it would be a phenomenal choice, especially for a wide 3-blade. Now, when it comes to 3 blades, once you get over 1.1 inch, things can get a little wild. This is a 1.25 inch cut, vented 125 grain VPA. And as luck were to have it, VPA has decided to sponsor me and the channel for this coming season, and you. So if you're interested in testing or maybe purchasing some VPA broadheads, you can use discount code Rambo10 for 10% off. That's a pretty big deal when it comes to buying broadheads. You're at least going to get free shipping, maybe a little tax off, and, well, every little bit helps, right? So discount code Rambo10 at the VPA broadheads, the entire site, all the way from, they are dozens and dozens of broadhead choices, to their swag, their traditional bow risers, and I think it's even available on the weapons side of Vantage Point Arsenal. So check that out. I am super excited for this build, and I'm super excited to put this information in your quiver. So I'll see y'all on the next one. Hashtag White River Rambo. Pushing every day, son. Glad to have you along. We'll see y'all on the next one.